Chapter 1. "That's it," I said, flinging myself down onto the office sofa and stretching my length out over it, which, as there's 6'2" of my sheer lankiness, meant my feet were dangling off the end. "That's really it, I swear to you, Jacob, I'm through with blind dates. It's a blood sport, and they never end prettily, do they?" Jacob didn't answer, not at first. He merely gazed at me over the top of his reading glasses, smoothed down a page of his latest script and tutted. In spite of being an actor, my best friend since school days was the calmest man I knew, and had never let anything muddy his waters, or at least not for long. He often used my office for learning lines, as he said it helped him concentrate, and I didn't mind, as he never interfered with my consultancy work. Anyway, I was really glad he was here now. What happened last night then? I gather from your supine position on the sofa and general air of malaise that it wasn't a great success. I snorted. Even for Jacob, this was underplaying it somewhat. So I made myself more comfortable and proceeded to tell him about my disastrous date. Not that it was entirely the other bloke's fault. I don't pretend I'm any great catch, but I'd made my best effort to look presentable, and had worn my neatest casual trousers and a deep blue shirt I hope brought out the colour of my eyes. Heck, I'd even smoothed down my hair with gel I found buried in the back of the bathroom cabinet, in the hope my unruly locks wouldn't spring up and frighten anyone like they usually did. Not sure why I'd bothered, because when Hector, yes, that was his name, turned up outside the Dog and Duck 20 minutes later than anticipated, he was already half cut, or worse, and wearing a pair of jeans that must have been in their prime in the Falklands War, and a t-shirt that looked as if it had been worn already this week by several different people, possibly all at the same time. On top of it all, he was surely at least 10 years younger than I am, and I was only 32. It wasn't how he'd been described to me by the contact who'd set us up, and I made a mental note to drop said contact from the Christmas list just as soon as I started to make one. Hector's first words failed to endear him any more to me either. He leaned in, as if going for a kiss, a prospect I sidestepped smartly, just in case the Child Protection Police should suddenly descend upon me, and whispered, "Hey, you're older than I thought you'd be, but I've always liked older men. So let's just do it, shall we?" Before I could get my mind around exactly what Hector might like to do, he'd grabbed me by the arm and was half dragging me over the threshold and into my local gay-friendly pub. I stumbled and bumped my head on one of the bookshelves. The landlords were keen readers, a fact that came in handy if you'd been stood up. By the time I recovered, Hector was at the bar, sprawled against it as if it was the only thing standing between him and collapse, and perhaps indeed it was, and asking to see the cocktail menu. To Mike the landlord's credit, he didn't laugh or flinch at this sort of nonsense, but glanced in my direction, eyebrows raised. "I'm afraid we don't offer cocktails, sir," he said. "Are you sure you're wanting alcohol at all? I can offer a mean St. Clement's." Hector opened his mouth to protest, but I elbowed my way in and got there first. "Yes, thanks, Mike, that would be great. A St. Clement's for both of us, I think, and a couple of bags of plain crisps, too." Order fulfilled and order restored, I steered my too young date over to a table in the corner, where I hoped he wouldn't cause any trouble and get us both kicked out. I liked the Dog and Duck, and had been drinking there for years, lately bringing blind dates here too, so I had no wish to lose my nearest comfort zone. Where else could a single gay man go? I needed to keep on the right side of Mike, come what may. I placed both drinks on the table, and kept a close eye on Hector to make sure he could sit down unaided. There was a moment of uncertainty, but in the end he made it. As I sat down too, he leered at me and wiped the back of his hand over his mouth. How I wished I'd not gone for the solidarity option and had ordered myself a beer instead. It felt like I might need it. "So," he said, reaching forward and stroking my hand, "what sort of stuff do you like doing?" I smiled and took a sip of my drink. The sweetness made my tongue fizz. My tea business keeps my nose to the grindstone a lot of the time, but I'm a great fan of the theatre, and whenever I get the chance, I'm out bird-watching. There's not a great deal going on in the twitching world during the summer. The curse of living in the UK, I suppose. Having just added at least 2 decades to my age through what I'd let slip, I paused and took another slurp of the orange goo, whilst the unfortunate Hector gaped at my now very evident levels of dullness. Some smidgen of social nicety must have been ingrained into him, however, as he gathered himself together, placed his hands firmly on the table and swallowed. "Oh, nice," he said, and then lapsed into silence. In spite of the non-alcoholic drinks ranged like a barrier between us, I could smell the spirit on his breath.